Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new episode of the Lapdown Podcast. We are back from a brief hiatus. I have with me this evening Mr. JP, Jamie, Ryan, and Tyler. How are we doing tonight, fellas?
Not too bad, you?
Hello!
Hello. Hashtag not sponsored by Dr. Pepper.
JP's talking, but he's muted.
Hello.
There he is.
Mute monster. Hoo-ha-ha.
Well, it's good to be back in the saddle. As always, we thank our sponsor, the Alkali Project, for writing the intro music. And boys, we are going to get right into it because we have a lot of stuff to cover. So
Yeah, we
over
do.
the last couple of weeks, we've seen some major silly season news. The biggest one that it had been rumored for a couple of weeks, and it's been talked about for the last couple of years. But Martin Truex Jr. has finally decided to retire from full-time Cup Series action, and that left the world wondering, well, who's going to take over the 19? And that was spoiled a little bit on Saturday, even though it was rumored. And then the official announcement came on Tuesday. Chase Briscoe from Stewart-Haas Racing will be coming to the number 19.
I think that's a big pick. I think that's a great.
Yeah. From what I've seen, though, it looks like that Bass Pro Shops will be staying as the sponsor. It does not look like Mahindra Tractors will be coming with him unless they spend something during the off season.
There's some audio lag on Ryan's end.
How do we feel about Mr. Briscoe going to Joe Gibbs from Stewart-Haas?
Well, go ahead. Whoever wants to go first, go first.
We're all a little rusty. Everyone wanted to talk at the same time.
Go ahead, JP.
All right. So, I think it's a great move. This is my plug to say good evening, and I think it's a good move for him. I look for him to get his first top 5 within 5 races of being with the team. That 19 car's been fast, so he's going into a fast number 19 car, so I see no reason he can't win the first 5 races next year. Very happy for him.
Can I say this for a second real quick? Because I actually have a really cool. I actually personally like the Chase Briscoe signing by Joe Gibbs. It's a big win for Joe Gibbs and a huge loss for Ford. Yep. Like, it's a huge loss for Ford because Chase Briscoe is usually one of the best. I would say top 3 Ford drivers right now, hands down. He may not. He's actually outperforming his equipment. He may not look like it, but he's outperforming his Stewart-Haas equipment.
Yeah.
And he's
Jamie. What are your thoughts?
Honestly, I don't know how I feel about it as of right now. I think it's kind of a stretch to say he's outperforming his Ford equipment, just because all Fords took a little while to get going, and now that it's actually picking up, you're starting to see some speed from him. But at the same time, when we're talking about young talent that can help bring some youth and have a good average of finishes, I think Briscoe is one of the leading candidates in that kind of category. So JGR, I think they're setting themselves up pretty well with some good youth talent now with Briscoe, Christopher Bell, and then you still got old man Denny railing in the boys, making sure that they stay in line. I think it's a good move.
All right. Ryan, what about you? Ryan, if you are talking, we cannot hear you, sir. Nothing.
I don't know. I think he's having some technical difficulties.
Yeah, I think he's having
you
some
can go ahead and go.
technical difficulty. Yeah, we'll keep going. It was keeping up with the silly season news. It was rumored a few weeks ago that Harrison Burton will not be returning to the 21 for Wood Brothers next year. And it has been heavily rumored over the last, I would say, 2 weeks that Justin Haley might go to the 21, as he has been really, really, really performing in that number 51 car for Rick Ware Racing. He's got a bunch of top 10s this year, which is, it's not by luck or strategy. He's literally like been driving himself into the top 10.
I think Rick Ware just needed somebody that can actually wheel a car to drive those cars.
Yeah, they also put a lot of money into that team too. JP, what are your feelings of Haley maybe jumping ship from Rick Ware to Wood Brothers?
Well, first of all, I saw a quote by Rick Ware saying that they are committed to Justin Haley, so I'm not too convinced that it's going to happen, but I would go for it if it was to happen. I mean, that car's been, like you said, running top 5, top 15 constantly this season, and very impressive.
Tyler, what about you?
Oh, about the Harrison Burton not leaving the 21, or about leaving 21.
Justin Haley possibly going in.
I don't know if I like the thing because he's going to be put in. I mean, Wood Brothers haven't been top tier equipment since I'd say late 90s. No, maybe late 80s. I would say late 80s. They've been about midfield. They've won races here and there, but I think adding somebody like Justin Haley, I think Justin Haley getting a Penske back to Wood Brothers car, I think he'll add to that top 5, top 10 total, and maybe get a top 5. He's a good super speedway. I could see him getting another win or two if he does go to the Wood Brothers.
Yeah. Well, you gotta think the 21 was kind of a top team a few years ago when Ryan Blaney was in there. He was running up front consistently, and then they kind of fell off after he left and went to Penske, and then they put Paul Menard in there, and then I don't know who was after Menard, and then Harrison Burton comes in. But yeah, also we got some news on where the fourth. I'm sorry, Jamie. What are your thoughts on this thing?
Honestly, I don't. If I was Justin Haley, I don't even know if I would go to Wood Brothers.
Really?
Yeah, I personally wouldn't. I personally wouldn't, only because out of that example that Greg just talked about, the only one who was able to do anything with Wood Brothers is Ryan Blaney, and Ryan Blaney is a NASCAR champion. Justin Haley is not a NASCAR champion.
I don't know, Jamie. I kind of low key have to disagree there on low key.
What have you seen that made Justin Haley a NASCAR champion?
I mean, not necessarily a NASCAR champion, but I could see him running like top 5, top 10 week in and week out. He's missed. I would honestly think besides him and Chase Elliott and Alex Bowman are the 2 most consistent drivers.
I don't know though about that, because if you look at the actual point stats, like I know we've talked a lot about Haley in terms of flashy finishes inside of top 10, but in terms of points, he's still right near the bottom, which tells you that
he's ranked 29.
Somewhere, something, he's still not earning the points that he would need to.
What Tyler is suffering from is he's suffering from recency bias. Recently, yes, Justin Haley has put in a few strong finishes, but as we look at the season as a whole, Justin Haley is he's performing as well as he can, and in his equipment, but going over to Wood Brothers is just a lateral move that doesn't necessarily have as much money invested as would be with what he's at right now. So I personally would not make the move.
Yeah, and I mean you can look at the strong finishes that Haley has put together, but at the same time, if you look at those races where he's had a strong finish, he gathered no stage points whatsoever. Like, he only seems to kind of show up there at the end of the race. So he's getting good points, but he's not getting enough points at like through the stages of the race.
And that's what we're talking about when it comes to consistent driving. That's what sets apart someone who has talent to being an above average NASCAR Cup Series driver to being a NASCAR champion. You have to be able to be in those spots to get those stage points. And granted, it could be equipment on Justin Haley's part. Like, he's definitely shown he's got the talent. Or else he wouldn't be in the spot that he's at now. But if we're talking about career progressional moves, moving over to a Wood Brother machine is not the career progressing move. It's more of a career lateral move, just to make a statement for my own sake.
I don't know. It's hard to tell because obviously Wood Brothers hasn't been good the last couple of years with Harrison Burton. But, I mean, obviously with Matt Benedetto in there, he was still able to make the playoffs both years he was in that car, despite the lack of a win. So, I mean, I think it's very much a question mark as to how good that car is because of the fact that you had a rookie driver in there for the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. I tend to agree with Ryan on this.
Also, before I end up getting kicked out of here because Discord was being stupid, I don't know if you guys mentioned this, but we didn't even talk about Stuart Haas shutting down on the podcast yet either.
We did a few weeks ago, but I do have some notes about.
I looked at our most recent uploaded episode, and the bio said nothing about Stuart Haas shutting down. So either someone forgot to type it in.
I know we talked about it though.
All right.
I do. We did. I do. We talked about it. I don't think we went into like where the Chargers were going. I think we didn't go into full detail about it.
We were making our best guesses on that fourth charter, and this is actually a great segue into the next silly season topic.
Also,
it was
Haas is not fully shutting down. It's just
that's what we're getting into, Tyler.
Yeah. So the fourth charter from Stewart Haas Racing is actually staying with Gene Haas, and is going to be the Haas factory team in the Cup Series. But he's also keeping his 2 Xfinity Series teams. And Joe Custer, who is Cole Custer's dad, will be basically running the operation. So does that mean that Cole Custer might be coming back to the Cup Series, or does maybe Haas retain one of the current drivers at Stewart Haas right now to stay in the Cup car? What do you think,
I think
JP?
it comes down to whether or not any of their drivers haven't already gone and found another home. Like, Briscoe would have been the one you wanted to try and keep, but he's obviously already found another home since being told that they were shuttering the doors.
Yep. Go ahead, JP.
So you got Bailey, and I think Bailey is the one that stays if Custer doesn't go over to that one Cup ride.
Well, and I think the question there is, has Barry already potentially signed something to go to one of the 2 open front row cars? Because that's a key partner Ford team for a driver and a crew chief who have been longtime Ford people with Rodney Childers.
Yeah.
And arguably, I'd say that one of 3 front row cars is a more solid position to go to career-wise than a solo entry for Haas that's just hanging on there.
Yeah. And a little note about the Chase Briscoe thing. He was talking about it after the press conference on Tuesday. He signed his deal with Joe Gibbs Racing 1 week after he was told that Stewart Haas was shutting down. So he's been locked up for quite a while.
Oh, can I add one more note to that? He actually talked to the Wood brothers before signing with Joe Gibbs.
But
Yep.
Joe Gibbs is also the only team willing to talk to him without requiring sponsorship.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Tyler, what are your thoughts about the Haas team?
I think they're going to be back markers, just like MBM and stuff like that. Unfortunately, as soon as next year hits, no matter what the driver is, I think it's just going to go back to what they were before Tony took it over.
I don't know, though, because Tony's been basically checked out of that team for a couple of years now, and they've managed to tread water at least. I think the real question is with the loss of the Ford support, what ends up happening?
I think they might be going to. I have a feeling they might go to Toyota, low key. That's what I've been. I don't know how true it is, but
Ford does need them, especially those Xfinity cars, for developing any sort of Ford talent. Because right now, those are the only development cars in the Xfinity series for Ford.
Yeah.
Like,
so Ford does not have a lot of
Ryan
people
C
in the
racing
pipeline.
cars, but they aren't developing drivers.
Yeah. Jamie, what do you think?
Around for a one-car team with Haas. Out of the leftover group, Josh Berry is going to get signed somewhere. Honestly, I see Josh Berry going to Wood Brothers instead of Justin Haley, or Josh Berry going to if House or 311 were to add a car with a Chargers. I get what we were talking about with who gets. If a company like those get it, then Josh Berry is going that way, which leaves Noah Gragson. He is stuck in what was called like the preliminary Kyle Larson scenario. Had to go through all the sensitivity training and
Is Jamie cutting out for everybody else, or is it just me?
Yeah.
How about now?
That's a little better.
A little bit better.
Yeah.
Not really.
No, you still sound like a robot there, buddy.
What about Jamie?
All right. Well, while Jamie gets that all sorted out, the next topic. So I was listening to the. Go ahead, Ryan.
I just don't feel like you got around to me there on that one, but
I'm sorry.
Realistically, I think the decision for Haas to basically hold on to that fourth charter, I think was made after they were looking at what their drivers were. I think they were talking with Briscoe. They heard Briscoe had signed a deal. I don't know what they've heard about the other drivers, but I think maybe they were seeing that Cole Custer might be the odd man out at Haas if they were to shutter everything. And that was the thing that prompted them to keep that one charter available.
So
do I sound any better now?
I was listening to the. Yes,
we can hear you. Because you've got two open seats at Front Row Motorsports for two Ford drivers. I think Barry probably could get one of those if he doesn't go to Wood Brothers. Because I think if 2311 or if Trackhouse end up buying a charter, I think they already have drivers picked out. so they wouldn't even really look at the free agent pool from the Stewart-Haas liquidation sale. Because if 2311 buys one, I think Corey Heim is the obvious pick. And if
I was going to say
Trackhouse
that.
does one, they've got 2 drivers in limbo right now waiting for seats.
Yeah.
And what I was
So-
trying to say before I was cutting out, Ryan, and it kind of goes along with what you're saying. I don't think Cole Custer is the odd man out. I think Noah Gragson is. He's kind of stuck in that early part of Kyle Larson-esque stuff with the sensitivity training, where there's not a lot of sponsors that want to get tagged along with the name of Noah Gragson.
Except for he's had Bass Pro money.
But it's a lot easier to get sponsors when you're a Kyle Larson because you're just once in a generational talent. But when it comes to sensitivity training, not a lot of teams that has sponsors are going to want to sign a driver where it's going to be hard to get new sponsors with. And that's why I think that Gregson would probably end up being the one that stays with Haas. Cole Custer is talented enough and can get sponsors to go to any race team that wants him. But Gregson is one of those.
My only question is what kind of thing would have prompted? Because is Joe Custer or Gene Haas, are they that committed to Noah Gragson that they would care, for lack of a better term, if he was the odd man out versus Cole Custer, who has that family connection to Joe Custer, obviously, where there's a reason why they would care if he's the odd man out at the Stewart-Haas camp.
I don't think it's a caring issue. I think they care about all their drivers. They want to put all their drivers in the best possible scenario. And being the father of one of the drivers, he obviously knows what kind of talent that his son has. And in that aspect, they may have that forced charge just in the event that for some reason the deal doesn't get done for Cole. But I personally don't see any realm of scenarios where Cole Custer does not get a ride if he's really looking for one.
All right. So where do you think Cole Custer would land then?
I could see him landing at a front row.
All right. I think realistically the 34 would be the spot that he could land because of the Love's travel stop money.
Exactly. That's what I was linking him to.
Yeah. But I also think that look at a guy like Ryan Preece, and that's where you get into the question of, do you take the guy who's been in Cup more recently, driven the next-gen car, or do you take the guy who's had more success in the Xfinity Series and has that one Cup win on his resume?
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. But again,
because Ryan Preece is also short on sponsors to avoid being the odd man out.
But again, we're referring to just the Haas drivers. And out of the Haas drivers, Cole Custer has a much better chance of getting into another company's equipment because he's got different sponsors that can travel with him. No,
what sponsors does he have? Because he's in that Haas car every week in Xfinity.
If you give me a moment, I'll pull it up.
All right, yeah, because
let me chime in real quick too. You said something about the possibility of him landing the 34 with the Love's travel stop, but what if Love's travel stop wants to follow Michael McDowell over to Spire?
I mean, Love's has been there since before Michael McDowell, so I anticipate that they would stay with the team, and that's coming from someone who's been a front row fan for a while. The Love's travel stop money didn't come in because of Michael McDowell, and I'd be a little curious if they would follow him when he leaves. Because, again, they were there with Landon Castle. They were there with... So they were there for years beforehand.
So there's a few sponsors that would travel with him. There's the Thompson Pipe Group. They're one of the traveling sponsors for Cole Custer this year. There's Andy's Frozen Custard, and there's also Fantic that sponsor both Noah Gragson and Cole Custer.
Yeah, I guess my question is, how many of those those sponsors though would one, be able to afford more than like one or two cup dates. And like Andy's Frozen Custard, they've been partnered with RCR and Cup for a while. So would they be able to afford a third or a second or third driver to support in Cup at a different team? Because outside of Bass Pro, you're hard pressed to find sponsors who can sponsor 2, 3, 4 drivers across different teams.
I got you, but I mean, also, I mean, we got to take the weight of the sensitivity training, though. Even for someone like Kyle Larson.
Yeah, I'm not saying I can see Gregson ending up back in Xfinity potentially for the Haas team. Potentially.
Well.
Hey guys, I'm back.
But specifically, I think the Cup seat, I could see that being kept open with the idea that Custer would fall in there.
If he doesn't get signed to another set.
Yeah, well, and again, I mean, I even look at his full-time Cup season from 2020. Almost every single race of that was in the Haas automation car. And almost every Xfinity race has been in the Haas automation car, so.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Oh, yeah. So, I was listening to the teardown on Monday, like I always do, and Jordan Bianchi dropped a little bit of news regarding the playoffs for 2025.
Playoffs?
Yep.
We're talking about playoffs?
So Atlanta, as we all know, will be coming out of the playoffs. It'll be the first race on Amazon or TNT next year in June. But Watkins Glen and Homestead will also be out of the playoffs. And the 3 tracks going into the playoffs are Darlington, which is expected because of the schedule this year, Loudon, and Gateway. JP, how do we feel about this playoffs overhaul, if you will?
NASCAR needs to keep it one way for a while and then change it if they don't like it.
JP, can you repeat that? Because I don't know if it cut out for everybody else, but it cut out for me completely.
I said, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. But no, I'm pretty excited. Just to see what happens to be like. Loudon used to be in a playoff, but is Loudon getting a second date in 2025 with that?
No. I presume that they're just moving the June date to the September date.
Oh, okay.
At least that's what I would presume, because the way I've heard it is that they're trying to move that in Gateway to try and make room for Mexico and Canada in the midsummer.
Mm-hmm. Oh, got ya. Yeah. So with new class coming in, I like that. Again, Iowa was new. That was a great race. So I anticipate all the changes NASCAR is making. They have their reasons, and NASCAR knows what they're doing. So I don't have a problem with it.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
All right. What are your thoughts, Tyler?
My thoughts? I mean, it's actually a great move. I mean, it's a great move moving on into the playoffs because beginning of June is the Canadian Grand Prix for F1. So that makes sense because of Montreal, and the track will be set up because it's not a permit track; it's a street course. So that makes total sense for Mexico, for Canada and Mexico, especially have it towards the summer, where, especially in Mexico City, with it being over a mile high, it'll actually be cooler. I think it's great. I mean, having Gateway in the playoffs. I mean, it's. I have it like a mid round, like where it's not like a race that counts for anything. And same with Loudon, but Darlington opening the playoffs would be sick.
Yeah, I mean, Darlington opening the playoffs, again, the only reason that wasn't the case this year was due to the Olympics.
Yep. Ryan, how are you feel about it?
So, obviously, being from the Northeast, I'm one of the people who's actually benefited by New Hampshire gaining a playoff date or regaining a playoff date. And I don't mind Watkins Glen moving back to the regular season. I think having 2 road courses in the playoffs was kind of setting it up for a potential championship run or late playoff run from a road ringer to potentially come in and basically just, like, let's say a Michael McDowell or or like a Chris Buescher were to win one of those road races to basically kind of get themselves in and then be able to gimmick their way to a late round playoff spot. More so McDowell than Buescher.
I found like I lucky have to agree with Ryan there. I have to agree with that.
Especially because you've got a plate track where luck can decide your fate more often than skill. So you mix that in.
Atlanta's out of the playoffs too, right?
Yeah, Atlanta, Watkins Glen, and then we get to the part where I'm not exactly the most pleased with the third track that's leaving the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because
Homestead.
I think Martinsville should have been the next one out instead of taking Homestead's playoff date away from them. Unless this is some sort of deal where they've accepted that, hey, we're not going to be on. We'll take ourselves out the playoffs to get the championship date because we know they're in the running or in the bidding for the championship date for 2026. But it just, Homestead the last 2 years has been a really great race. I don't see any reason why that should be getting taken out the playoffs.
Well, I heard something about they want like another warm weather race towards the beginning of the season. So my guess would be you would have Daytona, then Atlanta, and then Homestead, because it is also being heavily rumored by Jordan Bianchi that Bowman Gray will host the Clash next year, which is probably going to be frigid cold up there in North Carolina.
Yeah, well, and that's another thing altogether. Like, I've been one of the bigger defenders of the Clash at the Coliseum and the quarter-mile track. But that's because doing it at the Coliseum specifically brought NASCAR to a heavily populated area and a population that doesn't typically see a lot of NASCAR action.
Or
Bowman Gray is not going to provide the...
Or racing in general.
Yeah, but going to Bowman Gray with the same quarter-mile thing, because I'll gladly say that the race... the track, but as a season opening thing to at least get in front of as many eyes as possible made sense. Now doing it right in North Wilkesboro area, you're not gonna get a whole lot of eyes who don't know what NASCAR is just wandering into the Bowman Gray Stadium.
Yeah, but
and
Jamie,
you're gonna have the same problem of not raceable track.
Yeah. Jamie, what are your thoughts about the playoff changes?
I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. It's one of those things that I don't like to make judgments based off of like scheduling. I like, especially when we haven't gotten through this year yet, just to see how everything plays out with how these Cup cars are establishing themselves out to be. Now, granted, with the craziness that's been at Atlanta, and then seeing things at Darlington, it's definitely going to be exciting to see other tracks getting more opportunity to be in the playoff schedule. But at the same time, I do like Atlanta being in there. But again, I'll reserve judgment until the time comes upon us.
Yeah, and I don't mind Atlanta being there, but having Atlanta, Talladega, Roval, and Watkins Glen in those first 2 rounds just to me adds up to you're looking for quote unquote randomness and random winners to potentially slide their way through playoffs that otherwise wouldn't have much of a shot.
But that's also a strategic play by NASCAR to get further exposure for certain drivers that to get on the upcoming that may not be your powerhouses that could trickle into a top 4 playoff spot. So,
I mean,
it's all strategy.
out of the drivers that we've seen win already, my biggest fear would be that Cindric makes a round of 8 just because he manages to point his way well at the 2 super speedways and the 2 road courses.
Well, that's kudos to him for being a good driver at those locations.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like the road courses having 1 round where you can get a bonus or at 1 or 2 tracks versus 4 out of the 10 playoff races being tracks that benefit luck, especially the plate races.
Yep. Jordan Bianchi also put out an article today on The Athletic about Eric Almirola. He has been absent from the 20 car in the Xfinity Series. He was supposed to run the Charlotte Xfinity Series race last month, but about 3 days before the race, it was announced that Ty Gibbs would be in the car, and now we finally have found out why. There's not a whole lot of details as of yet, but apparently the Tuesday or Wednesday competition meeting before the Charlotte Xfinity Series race, Eric Almirola was in there along with the other like Toyota drivers that are affiliated with Joe Gibbs Racing, and Eric had apparently made some sort of comment that Bubba Wallace did not like, and they got into a verbal altercation that eventually turned physical. And
supposedly Eric was the one that started it.
Yes, and at that point, Eric was suspended from his driving duties. It has been reported, though, that he will return to the 20 car at Indianapolis in a few weeks. But it's one of those things that we don't really have a whole lot of information on. But what are your guys' thoughts? Could you ever see Eric Almirola being an instigator in a fight?
Yeah, when you piss him off, yeah.
Not really. I mean, again, you look at all the crappy situations he ended up being put with over the course of his career even with just the whole situation as to him leaving the 43 and all that was not exactly the cleanest thing, but he never spoke out against any of it. I mean, not to mention his attitude at the track has always seemed like just kind of a chill dad who, especially the last couple of years where he was basically looking towards retirement.
Yeah. And
but at the same time, like Bubba Wallace does have a track record for being a little extra. Let's be real.
Yeah, and that's where I would find it weird that Bubba was the defender and not the instigator in the situation.
Yep. And I don't know if you guys remember or not, this is not the first altercation between these two guys, too. Last year, it was either last year or the year before during a rain delay at Charlotte, they got into a little shoving match on pit road.
Because Bubba had raced him aggressively and then went and flipped off Eric Almirola, and Almirola was not a fan of that.
Yeah. So we'll have to see what comes out of this, if there's any more details and stuff like that. But boys, they were racing in Loudon this past weekend up in the good old New England, and I can't say I remember a Loudon race that wasn't affected by rain in recent memory. I went in 2020 right after COVID, and it rained, and I went in 2021 and it also rained.
Wait, you were there in 2020?
Yes, sir. I was one of the 12,000 people they let into the track.
First off, let's be honest. There was more than 12,000 people there. I was also part of that group.
Yeah.
Was at Dover in
There
2021 where they
there
only
was
supposedly
there
let
had to be at
20,000
least
in?
30,000 there that year.
Oh,
Also, that
Yeah.
race is fairly dry. I don't remember rain.
at
It,
the
it
end,
rained.
it was like rained at
It
like the
rained.
beginning of the race.
Yeah, it rained before the race started, and they were out there drying the track before pre-race. And
Okay.
I
I was
think it
gonna
rained
say,
after the
I
race
think I
too.
remember a couple of sprinkles around stage 2, but it never stopped the race.
Yeah.
Which
2021 was where it started raining right at the green flag, and Kyle Busch and Hamlin and Truex busted their
yeah,
asses going into turn 1.
and then actually, ironically, tying it back into the last story about Eric Almirola taking the win there after it was rain shortened by what 6 laps.
I think it was like 10 laps, maybe
I thought it
something
was
like
cut
that.
short
They
by
were
6 laps.
they were racing the darkness at that point. But
And they made the call about 20 laps before the end, saying that, hey, we're shortening the race by this much, giving the drivers warning.
yeah.
And
But
then Bell came up second.
on Saturday, Christopher Bell went 4 for 4. He has not
Yep.
lost a race at Loudon in the Xfinity Series. And then on Sunday, it was an okay race up till the rain delay. But then after the rain delay is when it really got interesting. NASCAR allowed the teams to put on the wet weather tires, and
Didn't
in
allow,
order
they
to
forced them.
force them to,
Yeah.
so they could try to get the whole race in. Christopher Bell swept the weekend. But how do we feel? So we've seen the wet weather tires on like shorter tracks, like half miles and 3/4 miles. How do we feel about seeing the wet weather tires on a mile track? JP.
I feel like we saw a good race when the wet weather tires took effect. Before that, it still looked like Christopher Bell was going to win. And, they had that rule. If NASCAR really wanted to, they could pull the plug. But for the race being official at halfway. But I really think NASCAR wanted to put push it and see what the wet tires could do. You know, like my dad and I were saying, it wasn't a playoff race, so there was nothing big on the line. So, what better time to try it than right there?
Yeah. What about you, Tyler?
The race was all right. I thought the race was actually pretty good right before the rain hit. I actually personally liked the fact that like they were using multiple lines, using below the apron and stuff like that. It actually showed who actually has experience in other race cars. If you actually like they were saying on TV, like they were finding the best line on the track, like dirt racers. They were primarily referring to like Chase Briscoe, Christopher Bell, Kyle Larson, how they were able to adapt and find the best racing line. And I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool having them 4 or 5 wide racing. I thought it was pretty good, honestly. I don't think they should do it on a 1.5 miles with way too high of speeds. But I think like flat tracks like Phoenix, I don't think Phoenix will ever get rain unless it's our luck. But
Junior's final race win came under the rain at Phoenix.
Yeah,
that's fair. But I also see the fact that like under mile tracks, I say let's try it like under a mile track with less banking. I do not try it on Bristol. Absolutely not. Bristol would be way too dangerous to try the wet tires on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Denny Hamlin said it today on his show. They don't really have a whole lot of corner speed at Loudon. But if you were to go to like a Bristol or I wouldn't say Atlanta, a Charlotte or a Dover where they're going 140 miles an hour through the corners, he said those walls hurt. And I mean, we saw that big wreck there with a few laps to go where Bubba Wallace and
And that was at 100
Austin
miles an
Dillon,
hour.
yeah, and they got destroyed. So,
And that was, like I said, and that was at 100 miles.
yeah.
But like I said, Dover, you're going 170, almost 100. I think if I'm not mistaken, Jamie, if I'm not mistaken, almost 180 down into the corner.
And that's on the dry.
And that's on dry. And then you got like a Charlotte, we're going almost 200 miles an hour into the corner.
If we're going to go down the rabbit trail of tracks that would be best fit for wet weather, you have Martinsville, you have Loudon, you have Richmond.
Phoenix, North Wilkesboro.
Yeah, those would be like the ovals that I would recommend.
Even Gateway. I honestly, I even would say Gateway too.
Gateway might be pushing it just because their straightaways and their turns are angled a little bit more than you are led to believe watching it on TV.
But they have about the same. Gateway has about the same speeds as New Hampshire, though. If you think about it.
Yeah, I mean speed wise, yes, but you also got to look at the angles of the track, though.
It's a very, very tight turn 1 and 2, and a little bit wider turn 3 and 4.
I mean, it's the same thing as to why, like, Indy and Pocono aren't being mentioned, even though flat tracks seem to be these things' specialty.
With the draft at Pocono and Indianapolis, are they high? They're like 202, 203 in the fucking corners. Pardon my language. But they
haven't been 203 into the corners
in the draft.
In a decade.
In the draft. I'm saying in the draft, not by themselves.
Draft, they're hitting at most 190.
190. No, they I was testing them out. They're like they're gonna be hitting 194.
Okay, maybe the iRacing version might be
194, 195 at most.
Any track that involves any type of drafting, wet weathers are not suitable for it because
absolutely not.
Vision is going to be a major issue.
One, because they're tightly especially.
Yeah, my only reason why I bring up those tracks though is that sometimes you'll have rain in one corner while the other 2 to 3 corners are fine.
Yeah, because of how massive those tracks are.
Oh, and Michigan's 100% out of the question.
But the one thing that I want to talk about with the wet weathers, I didn't mind that NASCAR stuck with the wet weather tires for this race. I did not mind it at all. I commend them for wanting to get the race done.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
However, the only complaint that I had was anytime that there was a caution, single caution was a non-competitive caution.
Yep.
That is my complaint. If you're going to stick to wet weathers and you say, hey, we are sticking to wet weathers, we are not doing dries, at least make the pit stops competitive. Because at that point, it was just like, hey, we're just going to take a break and put new tires on, and let's see what we got. Everyone sticks to their same positions. Have fun.
Well, I'm going to get into that in just a second. I actually have some good info on that one. But Ryan, as the person who is there at the track, how are you feeling about the wet weathers and all that good stuff?
Well, I will say, me and a bunch of other people that were there, we didn't think there was any shot we were going to get back racing. And then about 2 hours into the downpour, it all of a sudden just broke, which allowed us to get the track dry. And I commend NASCAR for one, not canceling the race based off of what we were seeing at the track, because at the track it looked like there was no way we were getting back racing. But eventually it cleared up. We were able to get back racing, and I like that we were able to start sooner with the rain tires. I just wish that on like the 6th or 7th restart, where they came down and got tires, that they would have allowed the drivers to choose and potentially risk something by trying the other tires.
Yeah, that's another thing I'm going to get into. One more question for you. After, like, when the checker flag fell, how dark was it? Because TV doesn't really show us anything. How dark actually was it? Like daylight?
It was we only had probably about another half hour to 45 minutes in it.
Okay.
Like in fact, I actually took a photo at the from my car after walking back to it, and you can see just how dark it really was. And this was after I got a tram ride back to the parking lot.
Oh yeah.
Too bad. That's not too bad.
Yeah, that's not too bad, but obviously, in terms of racing at a track that doesn't have lights,
I mean,
Yeah.
I see it's in the middle of nowhere. That they would not put lights. I see why they wouldn't.
Okay. So back to what Jamie was saying real quick about the pit stops. I do agree with the non-competitive pit stops because when I was listening to Denny Hamlin today, he said that Loudon has one of the slickest pit roads in NASCAR, and pit road was not completely dry, and you don't want to have people coming down pit road at pit road speed doing competitive pit stops and potentially sliding through their pit boxes and potentially pinning or hitting a crew member or injuring them or whatnot. And his co-host asked, well, what if they dropped the speed on pit road? And then he made a great point. He said most drivers do pit road speed by the lights on their dash. Not all of them have their tachometers on their
yeah,
dash.
they would have had to have done. Now, I guess my question would be, could they do a pass-through penalty similar to what they do on the start of the race to let them re-gear their tack for the new pit road speed if they were going to do slower speeds?
That question
It's a
was
lot
also
hard.
asked, and he said it's actually very difficult because
Mhm.
when they do the tachometer, said they mainly do it in the shops before they load the cars up, and they load the setups on the cars and all that stuff. So he said basically if you drop the pit road speed, you're not going off your lights, you're not going off your tack, you're just driving blind, hoping that you're going slow enough.
Yep.
Like
And
if it was if it was understandable if they were dropping at like 40 to 35, that'd be a little bit different.
But
But
would then the question would be, would that speed difference even be enough to really affect the grip in the track?
Right.
yeah,
I still
and
think 40 miles I think, was it 35 or was it 40 miles an hour at Loudon?
40, I think.
I think 40 miles an hour is plenty slow, honestly.
well,
Yeah, I don't know. That
and
track though is slick, and I don't know how slick it is in the wet weather tires, but
To be fair, your stopping distance do increase with rain. Yeah, you're right. Especially with a 3,400-pound race car, stopping distances are going to be. They're gonna have. Yeah, they're gonna have. It's judging the stopping.
What was it?
Excuse me.
Bubba Wallace stopping in somebody's pit box a
Right.
lot earlier.
yeah,
Right.
Yep. Also, there was a lot of drivers who were actually upset at the fact that when they did these non-competitive pit stops, they allowed everyone on the very first pit stop after the rain delay. They allowed everyone to refuel their cars because
Yeah, so guys like
I like
Dowell and Reddick who were fuel saving.
Yeah, say Bell, Reddick, and a few others were not going to make it to the end on fuel. And
Dowell
that would have
included.
maybe given the race to somebody else. But NASCAR said, nope, everyone refuel and all that. And then the guys who were trying to play the strategy, their strategy just got thrown out the window at that point. But I don't know if you guys had seen this picture floating around social media, but, they were racing different lines on the track, trying to find the moisture for the wet weather tires and stuff. And at one point, Christopher Bell was all the way down, all the way 4 tires below the commitment line for pit road. And I don't know if that should have been a penalty or not, because technically if you drop 4 tires below the commitment line, you have to be on pit road or down to pit road speed, even under green flag conditions.
Yeah, and I was on the other end of the start of the front stretch, so I didn't have a great view as to whether or not they were cutting and whether or not they were getting above the line.
They would not.
Bell was all the way below the commitment line.
Yeah,
all right.
I saw it on TV, and
Yeah, because I was sitting down by the choose cone.
Oh,
That way I could see the battles into turn one on the restarts.
So, Ryan was talking about the team or NASCAR not allowing the teams to choose what tires they wanted to run for the remainder of the race, and just basically making them stay on the wet weather tires the whole time, even though there were certain parts of the track that were drying out. Why do we think that NASCAR is holding the team's hands on this? Like, why can't they let them make their own decisions on what tires to run?
Well,
I think.
if I can, sorry.
No, go ahead, Ryan. We'll start with you.
I also want to quote a race from a couple years ago, back when Ty Dillon was in the 13 car at the Roval. They started in intermediate condition and allowed the drivers to choose wet weather tires that time. And Ty Dillon was able to make up a ton of spots and positions because he was one of the few drivers willing to risk it on dry weather tires in a rainstorm at the Roval. Now, obviously, oval versus road course is a little different, but
Yeah.
as I say, we saw drivers be willing to risk it and being allowed to risk it a couple of years ago on the road courses.
Go ahead, JP.
I think it boils down to it being so new on these mile and a half race courses. NASCAR wants to play it safe, but for Pete's sake, let the teams make their own decisions.
And I can understand it on that very first caution, like right after the downpour, when pretty much the entire track was still damp, mandating a wet weather tire. But after like the fifth or sixth restart, there was a very significant dry line around the course that I think a team could have tried the wet weather or tried the dry tires and found some speed.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Jamie? All right. Jamie, I think, is having technical difficulties again. So, Tyler, what are your thoughts?
About what?
Why NASCAR wouldn't let the teams choose what tires to run, and should they let them choose?
I think I kind of have to be on the fence of, like, I understand to an extent, like, not letting them change tires because of the pit stops being not competitive and stuff like that. But I also am on the fence of, like, why not let them change tires? Because, like I said, there was a significant dry line at the end of the race.
Especially for like that overtime restart or two.
Hang on, I'll be right back.
And
I'll be right back too.
Plus, with it being, the hotter those tires get, the faster they wear.
Yep.
So, and those tires wear super quickly and overheat because they need to be cooler. They are a softer tire and need a cooler operating temperature.
Yep. Now, here's where I could make an argument for NASCAR is that I could understand them saying that you have to stay on the wet weather tires if we were going to do competitive pit stops, because firing out of that pit box on slick, because the pit road was like the one place that you couldn't really find much of a dry lane. So I could understand if that was their reasoning. But at that point, I would like to have seen competitive pit stops in place of being able to choose the tires. The fact that they didn't give us either of those is just a little disappointing. Because if it's a non-competitive pit stop, there's no rush to get out the pits, which is the one place you would have found wetness and potentially trouble with the slick tires. And again, after the 6th or 7th restart there, I think leaving it up to the teams, that way it's on the teams if it fails, not that it's on NASCAR. Because that's the other thing is, like, I could see NASCAR not wanting to take the brunt of the criticism if there were an issue with the tires. Like if there was an issue, let's say there was a spin in the pits due to somebody going on to slicks, NASCAR wouldn't want the bad PR, but if they make it a choice by the teams, then it's not really NASCAR's fault, and NASCAR wouldn't take the brunt of the impact. They'd be able to say, well, it was their choice. They could have taken the wet tires.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
Yeah. All right. Well,
because that's where one of those PR situations that I understand NASCAR is trying to avoid the bad press, especially around the new technology.
right. Well, all right. We are going to now go into our green flags and black flags. Again, for our new listeners, green flags is something that we enjoyed from the race weekend, and black flag is something that we did not enjoy. This week we will kick it off with the man who was there. Ryan, what are yours?
All right. So my green flag has got to be the fact that we got to lap, 3:03 or something for the checkers. Yeah, the fact that we were able to actually get the full distance and more in due to overtime. I got to give NASCAR a ton of props for that, because even though we just spent the last 10 minutes or so talking about the decisions with the rain tires and NASCAR essentially forcing them into it, at the very least they were able to get to the completion of the race, which 3 years ago, this race would have been cut short and Reddick would have been your winner at lap 212 or whatever.
Yeah.
And for my black flag, I'm going to go ahead and say for the black flag, I'm going to just black flag Mother Nature for just telling her to leave us alone. Seriously.
Yeah.
How many rain-affected races is that this year now?
Too many to count.
I ran out of thingies.
I'll go next. Where'd Jamie go? He was in here when I looked to use the bathroom, but
He's been having tech problems, so he's probably just popped out to try and fix those.
oh. Okay, my turn. Green flag, black flag, right? That's where we are?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Okay. My green flag goes to Custerville Bill because he figured out how to move around that course in the rain the best. Congratulations to him.
I mean, he's found his way around that track the best, dry or wet.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. But my black flag, I have to agree with you. Northern Mesa.
All right. I actually have another black flag if you guys want a little bit of diversity.
Sure.
Go ahead, Ryan.
So since multiple people are going to have black flag Mother Nature, I'll go ahead and I'll say, especially for those of us in the stands, black flag and NASCAR for the decision to try and wait on that caution at the end, because a lot of us thought they were waiting to try and end the race by taking the white flag, but they came around and took 2 laps to go, and then threw the yellow. So they had no way of waiting, so they waited on a caution flag for no apparent reason.
They wanted a chaotic finish. I'm gonna black.
Well, but you were going to get an overtime restart if you throw the caution with 3 laps to go, or if you throw it with 2 laps to go. The only way you don't get a chaotic finish, and a lot of us in the stands thought that they were trying to do that, where they were trying to get to the white, similar to Pocono last year, where they race to the white, and then they throw the caution for the car spun around on the track. And I can understand that because of the race in the darkness and not wanting to go to overtime. But the fact that they waited and still ended up having to throw the caution before the white flag anyway, just got to give that black flag there.
I'm going to go ahead and do mine real quick.
Yep.
My green flag was in general as a racing in general in New Hampshire. Props to NASCAR in general. Props to NASCAR, well, the positive side of NASCAR, for putting on a great show at New Hampshire and actually finding a package that actually finally works with these flat tracks.
Yep.
And unfortunately, my black flag, unfortunately, it's a good and a bad thing. Black flag, NASCAR, what the hell were you guys thinking? In general, for that. NASCAR in general, the officiating still sucks. The officiating sucks, and they did make a great call for restarting the race. But I still am with Ryan on that black flag in general. Just that restart.
Yeah, because that very last
right.
caution, it just took forever for them to actually throw the caution for that spin.
Yep. What about you, Greg?
So I'm going to start with my black flag. My black flag is to NASCAR for not allowing the teams to choose what tires they wanted to run there at the end of the race. And my green flag goes to Joe Gibbs Racing for after Christopher Bell accidentally spoiled who was going to the 19, they brought Bell into the press conference to officially announce it. That was a golden PR opportunity right there, and I give them a very big green flag for bringing Christopher Bell in to make that announcement. But this weekend, they are racing in Nashville, Music City, and it is going to be very hot from what I've seen, air temperatures of about 105 degrees.
They might have to make it night race.
So let's say a prayer for all the fans in the stands, because if I'm not mistaken, I don't think Nashville allows people to bring in coolers still. But we are going to go ahead and make our race picks. And I have the wheel here. I'll show it to the screen. I don't know if you guys can see it. I have all 5 of our names here. And let's see who gets the first pick.
I just don't want the last pick again this week because
Come on.
I actually made decent work out of that last place pick.
First pick goes to me. And I am going to take the man who has the title sponsor of the race. I'm picking Alex Bowman.
Okay.
Is this just the pick Alex Bowman until it eventually pays off?
I don't know. It's the Ally 400. He drives the Ally car. So,
because you've picked Alex Bowman, what, 7 weeks in a row now?
No, this is only the 3rd time I've picked him. All right. Next pick will be Jamie. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you. I had something come up with my work, so I had to answer that call.
Right.
Pick-wise, for the first time in forever, I'm finally going to be able to pick Kyle Larson. Let's go.
Thank you!
All right. Next pick will be Ryan.
All right. Well, I guess I get my choice of the bunch because outside of Kyle Larson, I think there's only really one other choice that makes a ton of sense, and it's somebody out of that SHR group. They've been very good at this track for the last several years, and not just Harvick. Amarola's had good finishes here. Briscoe's had good finishes here. I'm going to go 2 weeks in a row. I'm going to take Josh Berry.
Right.
I love that
I think
pick.
the 4 car, I think Rodney Childers can get that thing working. They've had top 5 speed at this track in New Hampshire for whatever reason, and
All right.
I'll go ahead and take it.
I like it.
Next pick goes to JP.
All right. So I'm going out on a limb and picking Corey Heim.
Corey Heim. Is he
He's
even in the Cup race?
Is he driving the entry for 2311 Racing?
Yeah, he
Believe.
is. Okay.
Yeah, he is.
I
He's on the
for
entries
some
list.
reason, I thought that was a different track that he was going to be doing that at. So, all right, taking Corey Heim.
And
Definitely a bold pick there.
and,
Yeah.
and the last pick goes to Tyler.
Chase Elliott.
All right.
Wow, not even a consideration for Byron. I'm kind of surprised Byron went unchosen.
I'm only choosing Chase Elliott because he's the 2022 winner here.
Do you know who I'm actually really surprised that didn't get picked? The man who has been on a hot streak as of late, Christopher Bell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us think that he's done well with flatter tracks. Nashville's got banking. That and the Joe Gibbs cars over the last couple of years, it really hasn't. It's usually been a Hendrick and SHR type show.
Yeah,
Usually
also
it's either Lars.
Would be Bubba Wallace is a sneaky pick for Nashville.
Yeah, curious to see who everybody else ends up picking who aren't here tonight.
Yep. Well, I guess that about wraps it up for tonight. Thank you guys for being here, and as always, a big thank you to all of our sponsors. Oh, go ahead.
So it's been a while since I've been able to do my trivia of the night section of everything. And with how often I haven't been able to get in and out with these podcasts, but in honor of Martin Truex Jr. retiring at the end of the season, I will start off with which track of him racing in his career out of at least 15 times does he have the best average finish in his career?
Who are we going with first for this one?
I think I know it.
I'll let Greg go through the order because I'm driving and I can't see people.
I'll start it off. I'll say Dover. What about you, JP?
I'll say Talladega.
Wait, what are we doing trivia for?
The track that Martin Truex Jr. has the best average finish at, assuming that he's made at least 15 starts there. So Nashville and some of those newer tracks don't count.
Yep.
But for tracks that he made at least 15 starts at through his career, which one does he have?
I already know what my answer is.
I think they were leaving it for your turn.
Oh, it's my turn. Let's see. I'm gonna have to go with Sonoma.
All right, interesting choice. I'll take Kansas because I remember a lot of wins there. In particular, getting the sweep in 2017.
All right. What's the answer, Jamie?
You are all wrong.
Oh, wow.
What was it?
Average finish will be at Las Vegas. He averages 9.8.
All right, so it's a mile and a half. I was in the right zip code.
Yeah.
Well, what's number 2?
Number 2 would be Watkins Glen at 10.6.
Okay, yeah. I was trying to think of races that we even do twice a year because, like, most of the races that we do once a year, I wasn't even sure. Because he's only been in the series for about 15, 16 years.
Yep.
20. He's been in 20 years, 2004.
He was in Cup in 2004? I thought he was in the Cup for another year or two after that.
He actually ran the 2004 and 2005 Daytona 500.
Yeah, Daytona, but like for tracks like Watkins Glen in particular, was like
full time.
But on the flip side, what track has his worst finish average came from?
I think there's 1 to 2 answers. Was it an answer already given?
I already know the answer. Yep.
That's what I was gonna say. I think it might be JP's pick from the last question.
Yeah.
I think Talladega might be it.
I'm gonna say Daytona.
I would say Daytona, but I do remember that second place finish boosting the average.
I'm going to say for this one. Sorry, Ryan. Loudon?
Loudon is definitely not his worst average. Are you like trying to pick the worst options? That's right. You didn't pick Las Vegas for the worst average.
JP is trolling you, Ryan. He's triggering you hard.
What about you, Tyler?
Ooh, for his worst average finish, I'm gonna have to say. You said minimum 15 starts?
Minimum 15 starts.
I'm gonna have to say Pocono.
All right, Ryan.
I said Dega.
There you go. Okay, what you got, Jamie?
Greg, you got it correct. It is Daytona.
Yes.
All right. I'm assuming Dega's not far behind.
Now, Dega was right there. So at both restrictor plate tracks, he has an average finish of 21st. But at Daytona, it's 21.2 to Dega's 21.0. So if it's a restrictor plate, do not choose that.
So literally, it's a 0.0. So it's a 0.2 difference.
Correct.
Oh wow, that's good. That's good.
I think my pick did make some sense. Also, JP was pretty far off on that first question. Then,
yeah. But I guess that will close us out. As always, a big thank you to all of our sponsors: Fanatics, Sleeves, Century PC, Bulletproof Coffee, W Energy, Fanatics, Fubo TV, and Duke Cannon. Please be sure to like and subscribe. We do have a YouTube, and rate us on Spotify and all your other streaming platforms. But until then, this has been the Lap Down, and we will see you guys after Nashville.
Ooh, Noah Gragson's in the 30th. I didn't realize Noah Gragson's in the